This is probably the worst possible angle for this, but I mean, Christmas. All right, hello, welcome back everyone. I'm Emilee Harris, author of STEAMY Historical Romances, and today I am introducing one of my favorite stories that I have written. Please excuse my loud chair. And I am going to share with you more of the tidbits and details and fun things for this book this month, because this is currently my only publicly available book that has kind of a Christmas theme. So stay tuned to find out about To Love in Silence. Welcome back everyone. And as mentioned, today I'm talking about To Love in Silence, which is book 3 of 6 in my Currents of Love series. Now, why is this book important and near and dear to my heart? Well, even though this was the 3rd book in the series, this was actually the first book I thought of in this series and kind of sparked all of the others. So how did that come about? Well, in 2018, I attended Historical Romance Retreat and had an absolutely wonderful time. It was great. I was a brand new baby author and I was mingling with the other authors. I was having so much fun. But I quickly realized, I think I had realized a little bit before that already, that I needed to adjust my genres. I had been working in Victorian era Westerns, and those did not seem to be the most popular for readers. So I thought, well, how can I change things up? What era do I need to be in? And actually the more popular era that many of my fellow authors were writing in was the Regency era. So there was a lot about that I didn't like because I've never been a huge fan of the Regency era, but I said, okay, I'll give it a try. But I want to do something different from what everyone else is doing. Regency England is the thing, so okay, England, I can go with that. But how can I make it different? One thing I thought of was the fact that during this time, the Napoleonic Wars were still going on, and a lot of the books that I have read in Regency, yes, I do read them, even though it's not my favorite era. A lot of the books I had read concentrated on the land, basically. You don't hear a whole lot about the Navy. And of course, me being me, and I love all things military, all heroes military, I said, why not focus on the Navy? The British Royal Navy has a huge history, a very proud history. Why not go with that? So the first thing that came to mind then was, all right, I want a naval family, so I can create a series of books around these family members. And for some reason, I had it in my head, okay, a couple of the family members, the boys, they're going to be active in the Navy. But I wanted kind of the one, what to call him, the anchor character, the one brother, to have some reason that he could not join the Navy, like his father, like his brothers, and this was going to be the younger son. So I was trying to kind of incorporate these ideas of hierarchy within the nobility and within family, that the elder son usually gets everything, has the title and all of that. The younger son in general gets kind of left out of all good things. And on top of that, I wanted to give him a reason why this would hurt even more. I know, I was being so cruel to this baby that I hadn't even created yet in my story. But the reason was I wanted to give him some really difficult hurdle at the time to get past, to get over, to show how great he really was, meaning the strength of character that he really had. So that was the thing that I loved and admired about this character, and he was the one, eventually I named him Eric Langdon. He's the one who started the whole idea. So now you may ask, okay, so what kind of issue did I give him? What did he have to deal with? Well, this goes along with my previous video about writing disabled characters. I decided to make him deaf. The reason for this was because I didn't want this hurdle he had to overcome to be something obvious. You know, if we think about, oh, well, he couldn't enter the Navy, then all of the usual culprits come to mind. Oh, maybe he had a riding accident when he was younger, he broke a limb, like a leg or something, and that left him lame, and now he can't perform the physical duties needed on a naval ship. But that seemed way too easy for me. I decided to give him an obstacle which actually did not impede any of his physical ability. He can do anything and everything any of the other sailors on a ship can do. What would prevent him from being able to go into that kind of life, military or otherwise, on a ship, he wouldn't be able to hear the orders. That's kind of a big deal, especially in the Navy. So this was my train of thought, my thinking. Now, how did I come up with this? Because it took me a while. This didn't come to me right away, but around that time, I remember tooling around on YouTube and coming across, I think it was America's Got Talent. Yes, I fall down that rabbit hole too. And I remember watching a singer. Her name was Mandy Harvey, and that was her background. She was deaf, and what I found particularly interesting in her story was she wasn't born deaf. She didn't have any sort of an accident that took away her hearing. She got sick, and it degraded her eardrums, I believe. And I thought, that is perfect. That gives not only this hurdle in, you know, the way that my character is perceived by society, but it gives context in that he understands what he's lost. Meaning he did not have this issue growing up, and so that makes it even a bit harder. And this singer's story, which by the way I will link to her audition video because she's a great singer. I adore her. But I really enjoyed her story because it is one of realizing that life doesn't just end because something unfortunate happened. And she made the conscious choice to move forward and make a great life for herself. And that is in essence what I wanted my character to do. And he has done, to a point, when we meet him in the book. All right, moving on, because this video is already getting a bit longer than I would like. That was my inspiration, Mandy Harvey, mostly, and finding a way to be creative in this storyline. The other thing I want to mention is that what was the societal norm at the time for people who were deaf? Because it was very different than what we know today in our attempts to be inclusive and to be understanding. That was just not a thing in the late 18th and early 19th century. My book takes place in the early 19th century, where the first kind of rudimentary advances were being made in things like education for the deaf, and understanding that just because someone is deaf does not mean they can't communicate. So early sign language was a thing at this time, but the overarching belief still toward people who were deaf was that they were somehow lacking. They were less than, in some cases less than human, in fact, because we associated reason and thought process with the ability to verbally communicate, which many deaf people could not, especially if they never had hearing to begin with. Now, my character is a little bit different because he was speaking and hearing up until his teen years. So he was able to still communicate that way. But in his case, society, just the moment he lost his hearing, kind of lumped him in with this overarching stigma of basically he is less than capable mentally because of his hurdles in communication. So this is what I try to give as the backdrop for the story and kind of the struggle that my character comes up against in trying to lead as normal of a life as he can and as productive and good of a life as he can, while having to deal with the way that most of the world views him. So I found this to be a very interesting theme, storyline, etc. And the last thing I want to chat about is how I had to change as an author in order to write this character. Now, I wouldn't say there were huge, massive shifts for me because I write romance and the focus for me is the emotional development and kind of acting of the character, not so much the outside interaction, although I do a lot of that also, actually, because I tend to bring a lot of action and suspense into my stories. But what the biggest challenge for me in writing this character was not only, first, I had to think about, well, what would be his life experience? This is not an experience that I have. So I have to do my best to consider his unique view of life in how he interacts with his surroundings. So that was one. Second, once I thought I kind of had a handle on that aspect of it, I had to remember how to write description. Because you would be amazed how ingrained it is to describe things as he heard the leaves rustling, or there was a noise off to the side, or so. There is a massive amount of description that happens through hearing. And I caught myself several times putting in some descriptive note as though he could hear. And then I had to sit and think, okay, wait, I have to change that. So, taking away the sense of hearing, how can I describe this same event or this same thing in other ways, using other senses? And that, I think, was a massively useful exercise. I mean, it really did kind of step up my abilities, I guess, as an author. Now, granted, this is the first time I've done a character like this, so how far I advanced was probably not very far, but in my experience of writing this book, this was a major positive factor. All right, that is all that I want to chat about today. For the remainder of this month, I have all sorts of fun things and stuff planned related to this book, to little tidbits. I have trivial tidbits, and this was author inspiration, I believe. I'm going to want to talk about things like mistletoe and Christmas cookies, so stay tuned for that. And I wish you all well until the next video. Happy reading, everyone. And as mentioned, today I'm talking about To Love in Silence